I want to say welcome to the show, Robbie Kennealy. Do you want to do an introduction, Sal?
Yeah, we could do a short introduction with them. Well, last week we had his teammate Kyle Keller. So this week we got the second part of Jan's racing team. Robbie Kennealy, who's
Gotcha.
who's running for Rookie of the Year this year. He's driving the number one Jan's Towing Ford for Jan's Towing and out here in Southern California.
And he was the highest finishing ARCA West driver in the race out at Phoenix Raceway this past weekend.
Yes, he was. He finished ninth out of a stout field of 34 cars. Exciting race, a lot of action. Um, the tough part was that they had no practice and no qualifying, so he had to go out without even ever knowing the track
Yeah,
at
everything was
all.
rained out.
And it was rained out. Plus, it was a green racetrack because there was no rubber laid down because of the rain. So they kind of throw him out to the wolves, as as I would say. But other than that, Robbie, we want to welcome you to the show, and we're just going to talk a little bit about your experience that you had on Friday night, and then just touch on your season opener at Kern and how you moved up from your junior late model into the ARCA Menard Series West.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for having me.
So first, we'll start off with with your transition from Madera, into the fold over here with Jan's Towing. How you found Jan, and Jan found you, and how you became an ARCA Menard Series driver, especially when you look at the big, huge class of junior late model drivers and pro late model drivers that are out there on the West Coast, and he chose you and Kyle Keller.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big story, but to give a little bit of a short summary of it, I did junior late models at Madera Speedway for 3 or 4 years. It all started out, the first year was just me and my family doing it. And then we eventually met the Kellers, and specifically Kyle. Kyle is pretty much the reason why I have this ride. And really, he's a big part of my accomplishments today for sure. After we met Kyle and his dad ended up helping us. And from then on, me and Kyle have been teammates. So me and Kyle have been, teammates for probably 5 or 6 years now. So it started out in the junior late models with Kellers. After running with them, I ended up in my last season winning 2 races and tying for the championship. I won a total of 3 races in the junior late models with Keller and their whole team. And then after the junior late models, I did 1 season of pro late racing. My first pro late race, I won the 5,000 win Summer Speed Fest at Madera Speedway. In Kyle's old car that he had won the 10,000 win the year previous, which is pretty cool. So, like I said, Kyle's a huge part of it. After I ran my first pro late season, I did half a season in ARCA in our own equipment, still teammates with Kyle. That was a pretty cool experience, but it was very hard, doing it as like a family type of thing. The Kellers were involved, my family was involved, people like Jason Lawton were involved. So that was definitely a hard year, but it was very fun. My first race was Irwindale Speedway. I finished top 5. We were running an old Sunrise Ford car, which is a lot of what Jan has now, which is pretty cool. After Irwindale Speedway, we went to places like Roseville, Bullring. I did 1 race at Phoenix. I got wrecked out in a lot of those, and I didn't finish. But my best finish was Irwindale Speedway, where I had a top 5. And then after that, I was committed to doing another full-time year, my first full-time year in ARCA. But within the first 2 races, I blew up 2 motors. And after that, I couldn't race anymore. So Kyle continued to race the rest of the year. This is 2024. He continued to race the rest of the year, and it went all the way up to 2 races to go where Kyle was sitting 5th in points. And he ended up getting wrecked after the race ended at Madera Speedway, and we weren't able to continue. And that's when Kyle met Jan, and Jan gave Kyle the opportunity to finish out the rest of the year with him. And I was just a crew member. I started out as a crew member with Jan. I was just a crew member to Kyle, helping a friend out, working on their stuff, going to the shop with Kyle, getting the cars ready and stuff for the last 2 races a year. And then after that, I think Jan just saw me working really hard, and he gave me a shot at my first race with Jan was the December 21st Irwindale Extravaganza, where I ended up finishing, I think it was 5th or 6th in one of his cars. And since then, he offered me a full-time ride alongside, someone who's like a brother to me, Kyle, my teammate. And with our first
The
race.
rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah.
It started off our first race at Kern, where I qualified. I was 2nd in practice to Daniel Hemrick, and then I ended up qualifying 6th. I saved my tires for a little bit, probably a little too long, longer than I would have wanted, but I think I fell back to 8th, but then I ultimately ended up finishing 4th, and Kyle had a photo finish finishing 2nd. So like you guys said, the rest is pretty much history.
But, when you look back at the race at Kern, you were still able to get around Daniel Hemrick, which Daniel's running. He was running for Bill McAnally Racing in what I call that the 16 car. And everybody knows the 16 car is like their championship car. They're only running one car this season. So, I mean, to get around Daniel Hemrick and beat Daniel Hemrick, at the end of the night, that's a big accomplishment. But I think the bigger accomplishment, which we have to talk about, is what happened this past Friday night in Phoenix. To avoid all the carnage, to avoid all the chaos that went on, throughout the night. Not only that, but having to wait to see, if the rain was going to hold up enough, if they're going to be able to get the track dry, so you guys get the race in on Friday night, which they did. And, you made your moves when you needed to, and you picked up the 9th place finish. And like Sharon said, you ended up the highest West Series driver, for the night, which is a huge accomplishment as a rookie.
Yeah, this last weekend was definitely a really, really cool experience. Really in the moment, you don't really look back and see how much it means and see how big of a thing it was. But after a few days to reflect on it, look back on it, it was pretty good. Like you guys said, with practice and qualifying being out, us being a West Coast team, it's hard to compete with all the back East teams who have, simulators. They have pull down rigs. They have all this, support from the manufacturers. So when you go out on a green racetrack with no practice or qualifying, no adjustments to your cars, it's very hard to compete with them guys. But our whole team, our whole Jan's Towing team, they did a really good job preparing the cars to make it, easier for guys like me and Kyle on the racetrack. And it started off a little slow as you would expect, going against the guys who have all the support and are ready. Ended up falling back a little bit, but our cars were really good on the long run, and I was able to make a lot of gains and a lot of passes and just kind of stayed out of the carnage and ultimately finished 9th. And, to look at it sort of as a win, with against the ARCA West guys is pretty cool for sure, being the top ARCA West finisher in the race.
Yeah, but see, when you guys go down with the mindset, like you said, the guys from the East, but actually, you're racing, your West drivers are the ones, that you're trying to stay ahead of, because, that's where the points are, going to come in, which we see now. You're only 5 points behind Trevor Huddleston, who won the first ARCA West race at Kern. But I mean, you put yourself in a good position, not only points wise, but experience wise, and the fact, that it's a West from here on out until we get back to Sonoma, which of course we know Sonoma, we're going to get some of the Cup drivers, some Xfinity drivers back in. But I mean, now it's time, to focus, on just, your own the West drivers, that are going to be competing here on out, which will be, on the smaller tracks, which should play into your favor because a lot of the tracks, are going to be the size of Madera, with the exception of Portland, and like I said, Portland and Sonoma, which are going to be the your guys' road courses. But other than that, I mean, to go out there and make a statement in front of the East drivers, that's huge, especially when you guys go into Tucson, in April. It's going to be a big boost, for the team, for both you and Kyle. Even though Kyle didn't finish the race, but Kyle was making gains himself too, until he had his issues. But you picked up the slack, and you kept going, and kept plugging away, like I said, to grab that ninth place finish, was big.
Yeah, for sure. You go there, like you said, and really the only thing you have to think about is just the other West drivers. But you go there and you want to compete against those East guys. You want to put on a show and you want to make a name for yourself, no matter what, no matter who you're racing against. But at the end of the day, you look at it as we were able to finish, atop of it, and like you said, we're only 5 points back now. It's pretty cool because I feel like, maybe at the start of the year, people weren't expecting us to do this good to start. But I've always been confident in my teammate and, all the guys at the shop and Jan and everyone a part of this team. I'm very confident in them. And I feel like, we just got to keep this momentum going. And, at the end of the year, hopefully just keep racking up these points and be in the championship hunt when we come back to Phoenix.
And I've been to the shop and I see what goes on at the shop. You and Kyle, of course, you guys work hard. All the other, guys that come in and, and help with the, with the car, then plus you have Jan, who's there, as a team owner, he just doesn't leave you guys there alone, and take off. And, of course he has a very successful business to run, but you know what, he knows how important it is, for his presence, to be in that shop while, you guys are working on the cars, clean up the hauler, whatever it may be that has to do with the race team. Jan knows the importance, of being there and watching, and making sure, that the right things are being done, and that, no, the biggest thing is that that nobody's cutting corners, on the car. They're not, putting, junk parts in, they're not, trying to say, well, we'll just get by with this instead of that. Jan's making sure, that you and Kyle have the best, so you guys can go out there when you get behind the seat and you guys feel, hey, Jan's giving us the best, now we can give them, 110, 150, 120% because we got that at the shop.
Yeah, for sure. To speak a little on Jan is definitely an owner and a person of his age that I've never seen or had before, for sure. I mean, like you said, it's a little different. A lot of the drivers nowadays, they don't really go to the shop, they don't work on it. But me and Kyle, we're there a lot. We spend a lot of time there with Marcos, Prados, and even Jan's there all the time with us. Working on these cars, getting ready. The crew chiefs when they come out, Brian Kaiser, Chris Greeny when they come and set them up. But me, Kyle, Jan, Marcos, Prados, all those guys, we're there. We're working on them hard. And like you said, all Jan has is top-notch equipment. He's there. He's making sure that every bolt, every nut, everything on the car is top-notch equipment because just like us, he wants to win just as much as we do. And not a lot of owners like Jan are in the shop working on him too, which is definitely a cool experience as a driver to have an owner who wants to put as much in as Jan does.
And then with that, Robbie, I know Sharon has some questions. We kind of talked a little bit about before the show started, so I know she has some questions for you too.
Oh, I always have questions.
Yeah, she does.
Okay, Robbie. Had you raced at Phoenix before?
Yes. So I had ran the last race of 2023. I was in a spec engine. I was running top 15, and then I had a restart violation, so I went a lap down. I think I finished 18th. And then the first race of 2024 I had done, but I was down a cylinder the whole race. So I finished one lap down in 21st. I hadn't had much experience running a full race up front beforehand, but I had done 2 previous races.
Okay, so you had to feel pretty good about a top 10 finish
Yeah,
at Phoenix on a national stage.
Yeah, for sure.
That had
Definitely.
to feel pretty good. Talk about that.
It's a big accomplishment for sure. Like I said, looking back at it now, being the highest finishing West driver, and then looking back on it and seeing that we beat a lot of the West or East Coast teams, and we're running with the West or East Coast teams, it is definitely a cool accomplishment.
It definitely is, and it means a lot for your team too, because you just gave them national exposure. It was televised on Fox Sports 1, along with the Cup Series was televised on Fox Sports 1. The Xfinity now is on CW Network, but that was, I think, a huge accomplishment to be the top finishing ARCA West driver, and it certainly gave you a good points day for your team. And talk about how you prepare for coming to Phoenix. How do you get prepared? I know you spend a lot of time in the shop. Do you go back and look at race footage or anything like that?
Yeah, the shop is definitely the most important. Going through doing all of the maintenance, setting them all up, but actually, we definitely do. Me and Kyle, a few times actually throughout the turned on some old race footage and just watched it while we were working to gain experience, to see what lines they're running, see passes, passing zones, and to kind of see it definitely helps to go back and watch some footage and see what works and what doesn't before showing up to race, especially when there's no practice or qualifying.
Yes, and you weren't anticipating that because of the rain, I don't think. Now, when you think about, do you watch like the Xfinity series and Truck Series and Cup Series? Do you watch those races?
Yeah, for sure.
Which driver do you want to emulate yourself after?
From someone from the past, I grew up always as my idol being Jeff Gordon. I was a really big Jeff Gordon fan, and my whole room was decked out in Jeff Gordon, growing up. So obviously he's not there anymore, but someone who I've always looked up to has been Jeff Gordon.
Okay, well, I think that's a good one. Now, what would you call your driving style? Are you an aggressive driver? Are you more of a methodical driver? What's your style?
I feel like if I had to, put myself in one of those categories, it'd be more of a methodical driver. In ARCA, you have to be aggressive for sure, and there's times that we are all aggressive, but I feel like I'm more of a methodical driver, kind of just save my tires and be there at the end when it matters the most.
Absolutely. I'm proud of you for that. And when it comes to winning a race, would you knock Kyle Keller out of it for you to win?
No, I don't think I would. I don't think I could let myself do that. Kyle's, like I said, and on this show earlier before, Kyle's like a brother to me and a teammate. I think anyone, I don't even think Kyle would be more mad than me. I think Jan would be the most mad at me if I were to do something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Now, what do you do when you're not racing, Robbie? Or is it all about racing?
It's all about racing in some way. When I'm not racing, I'm either in the shop, working at a different racetrack on somebody else's car. When I'm at home, I might be playing iRacing, or really my whole life is revolved around racing, and I wouldn't change it for a world.
Okay. I know Sal's got some more questions, so we'll bring him back into the queue to ask his questions. Because you always have questions too, Sal.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just my nature. They already know that too, because I go in the shop and I share stories with them and stuff like that. I pick at them and see what they're all about. But Robbie, like I said earlier, I was really impressed with the finish you had. When you come across the start finish line, and you start thinking, about what you accomplished, for the night, what's the first thing that goes through your mind?
I think the first thing was when when I realized after the race that I was the highest West finisher. Even after the race, the days after, I had people text me like, and I seen on social media of people saying that I won. And as a driver, I'm a competitor, and finishing ninth, to me that's not really a win, because you always want more than that. But to look back on it and see that, like, in the West Division, we were the highest finisher, and that's a really big accomplishment.
The reason I had said that was because we used to have the Iowa we used to have the Iowa race in the middle of the season, and it was the East West combination. But when they gave out trophies at the end of the race, they would give out a trophy to the East winner, and they would give out a trophy to the West winner. So each division got their own, even though it was one race, but they each got their own trophy. Unfortunately, with the Phoenix race has been here for eons, and it's always been considered like back when it was K&N, it's always considered as a K&N national race, which was basically for the because now we have the three divisions. We have ARCA East, ARCA West, and the ARCA National. So this is kind of turned into an ARCA national race rather than an ARCA East West race, which I feel they should still give a trophy to the main trophy to the race winner, and then I think they should still give one to the East and one to the West, because the drivers from the East aren't necessarily competing in the national. The same thing with the West is not necessarily competing in the national, like yourself, and Trevor, Kyle, and of course, the list goes on and on. So yeah, it was a big win for you.
Yeah, it definitely was, for sure. Like I said, I don't really see it as a win like that, just because as a competitor, you know what I mean, I finished ninth. But to look back on it and see, a lot of the even East Coast teams, like I said, that we beat, and all the other West Coast teams, it's a big accomplishment.
Robbie,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. One other
Mhm.
question. We do a hot topic sound off every Monday at 7:00 your time. And once in a while, we're asking drivers or different people within the industry to come on and talk with us over some of the NASCAR current hot topics. Would you be open to doing that?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay. Monday nights at 7. So keep that in mind.
I will, for sure.
Oh, okay, thanks. And how are you preparing for Tucson? Real quick, because 7:00's coming up real quick.
Yeah, for Tucson, there's not much footage because ARCA only ran there a long time ago, and the cars were a lot different. The tires were different, stuff like that. But you just watch a little bit of footage. Even if the cars are different and stuff, you can still see what lines they ran and some passing zones and stuff like that to help prepare. Because I have never been to Tucson, so I do hear it definitely is a tire saving track. So I'm super excited for it.
Okay, great. Sal, if 7:00's coming up kind of quick, if you have anything more that you want to say.
Yeah, basically that. You know what? Once again, congratulations, on on your good finish. Good luck. The rest of the season. Going out. Like I mentioned earlier, you are running for the Rookie of the Year this year, along with the Owners Championship, and of course, the regular season championship. It's going to be an exciting season for Jan's Racing. We've already seen what the two drivers are capable of. Now it's just a matter of just getting out there, and just just kicking some butt. And staying safe. Number one. And like Jan had said at the beginning of the season when I talked to Jan, alone, and he told you guys too, I just want my guys to go out and have fun, and not really put too much pressure on them. He goes, but boys will be boys. You guys are still young, and he realized, if it's not fun, then what, I mean, he wants you guys to still have that chance, to grow up into, whatever you may be, in the future, which is really a good, strong, advice from Jan, so one of these days that maybe I get lucky and he buys me lunch, or maybe he buys me dinner. I keep teasing him about that because everyone else gets it. So maybe with this interview, he might see something different and say, hey, you know what, I might get that phone call. But either way, he says he always has a half a sandwich waiting for me if I want it. He says I eat too much. So anyway,
Robbie,
yeah, we'll see you guys at the shop, and we'll see you in Tucson. And like I said, good luck the rest of the season.
Robbie, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Before you go, can you give us your social media handles in case anybody wants to follow you?
Yeah, but it's just Robbie Kennealy pretty much on everywhere. Thank you guys for having me, for sure. I want to thank Jan Qualkenbush personally for giving me this opportunity, and the entire Jan's Racing, Jan's Towing team. I'm excited to keep this momentum rolling into the last 10 races of the season for sure.
Well, we'll be watching, Robbie, and I hope if you win, you save a spot for us here on Fan for Racing Radio to come talk about it.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, guys.
Okay, take care now. All right, that's it for today's interview. We thank Robbie Kennealy for being here, and we hope all of you enjoyed the interview as much as we enjoyed doing it. Take care, everybody.
All right. Good night, everyone. Be safe, and we'll talk to you next week.